Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 24 of the Joe Cannon Health Podcast. I am Joe Cannon, and wow, it is episode 24. It seems like just yesterday since I started doing these episodes, but in the immortal words of Neil Young, 24, and there's so much more. If you are listening to me at the time I drop this podcast episode, it's just a couple days after Christmas, and I am probably driving home from spending a few days with family. I am most likely on a very remote and dark road, probably the kind of road you'd only see Bigfoot and UFOs landing on. So wish me luck in my travels. But beside that, I did not want to take a break for Christmas, as I think someone had recently asked me about. I didn't want to do that because I wanted to keep with my commitment of releasing new episodes every Friday. And any other reason was, I know it's the holidays and that can be a difficult time for a lot of us. And if for nothing else, I wanted to provide some, maybe a little bit of company for those who may not be with family this year or who may have been, spending it in less than ideal circumstances. So hopefully I've been able to achieve that with this episode. Now, this week's episode, we're going to be talking about cholesterol levels, specifically how to naturally lower cholesterol levels. That's what I want to spend the bulk of our time this week together talking about. But before we get into that, let's talk about the myth of the week. And this one's been around for at least 20 years that I can remember. And it's the idea that eating lots of protein will make your bones weaker. And basically the idea goes like this. If you eat a high protein diet, it will eventually lead to osteoporosis or brittle bone disorder. And the idea that's most often cited for this is that protein is an acid-producing compound. And the idea is the more protein you eat, the more your body pulls calcium from your bones to buffer or balance that acidity level. Eventually, as we keep leaching calcium from our bones would get weaker and weaker, ultimately leading to osteopenia and osteoporosis. Now, while there are some clinical studies that do appear to show that protein can lead to calcium loss, one of the issues with this is the studies tend to look at the amount of calcium that was excreted in the urine of people after they eat protein. Turns out that other studies, more recent investigations, have actually shown the opposite, that eating more protein actually tends to be associated with greater calcium absorption. And in one study that I found as I was delving into this was a investigation that looked at almost 40 previous studies. These researchers noted after analyzing all the data that higher protein intake appears to have a protective effect on bone, especially bone in the lumbar spine. And it also appears to be associated with more bone mineral density. That's compared to people who eat less protein. People who tend to eat less protein also seem to be associated with having more fractures. So most of the research does appear to show that more protein leads to stronger bones. Now, while I do think this is a myth, I don't think that people should take this as a mandate to eat meat at every meal and chase it down with a big honkin' protein shake. Remember, balance is the key. For example, higher protein foods tend to be lower in phytonutrients and higher in saturated fat. So while there may be a positive effect on bone density, think about what this higher saturated fat and less phytonutrients may do. If you're going to have a steak, toss some veggies on the plate too. I think at the end of the day, the big take-home message is balance. Okay, so let's switch gears now and talk about cholesterol levels, specifically how to lower your cholesterol if your doctor has told you it's a little on the high side, or maybe a lot on the high side. I know cholesterol is going through a bit of a metamorphosis. Over the past few years, there have been some who have been saying that you don't have to worry about cholesterol, that you make most of the cholesterol in your body. And while that is true, we do actually make most of the cholesterol. I think we need to realize that there is also little doubt that higher cholesterol levels are associated with more heart disease. So paying attention to your cholesterol is definitely something that you should be doing, and you don't want it to be too high. That said, no matter where you stand on this issue, if your doctor has told you your cholesterol is on the high side and you're looking for some ways to help bring your cholesterol levels a little lower, then that's kind of what I want to talk about this week. Before we even talk about any of this, again, if you're as OCD like me, you probably have your doctors make a copy of your blood tests and you put them in a spreadsheet so that you can track it over time. Yeah, I'm sure everybody does that like I do. Probably not. If you do get your blood tested, then it tells you right there on the sheet if you're high or if you're low. But just in case you just know the raw number, let me give you just a quick rundown on what the numbers actually mean. So if we're looking at total cholesterol levels on a blood test, we normally would want them to be less than 200. And I don't really think we need to be talking about the units of cholesterol, but just for fun and giggles, we're talking about milligrams per deciliter. That's really, really not important for anybody. Just realize that if you do see it on a blood test, at least in America, it's going to be, the units are going to be milligrams per deciliter. But when it comes to total cholesterol levels, we want it to be less than 200. Generally, on many lab reports, anywhere from 125 to 200 is considered normal, although as a rule, a little lower than 200 is going to be better than above 200. If we're looking at HDL, good cholesterol, generally 40 or more is where you want to aim for. Lower than 40, and that's usually a low HDL levels. Remember, HDL, H for happy. This is the good cholesterol. We want to have a lot of good cholesterol, a lot of HDL. So if that number on your blood test is greater than 40, fantastic. That's actually a really good thing. Conversely, we also have bad cholesterol, LDL. Think L for lousy. Well, we don't want to have a lot of LDL in our bloodstream, okay? So generally on a blood test, less than 100 is where you want to aim for. Less than 100. And triglycerides are another thing that's often mentioned on blood tests. And when it comes to triglyceride levels, these are the fats, by the way, that float through your bloodstream. And your body can use those fats to do things with them. And as a rule, you need triglycerides, but we don't want them to go too high. So on a blood test, we'd want our triglyceride levels to be less than 150. If you're looking at your blood test right now as you're listening to me, one other thing you may notice on your test sheet is something called non-HDL cholesterol. Non-HDL cholesterol is just your total cholesterol minus your HDL, your good cholesterol. So it's your total cholesterol minus your good cholesterol, and that's why they call it non-HDL cholesterol, non-good cholesterol, if you will. And so basically, for instance, if your total cholesterol was, say, 200 and your HDL was 40, we just subtract 40 from 200 and we get 160 on the non-HDL cholesterol, okay? And as a rule, if you're looking at your non-HDL levels of cholesterol, less than 130 is where you want to aim for it. If it's less than 130, that's a good thing. Those are your basic ranges of cholesterol, HDL, LDL, triglycerides, and stuff like that. Let's now jump into how to tackle lowering your cholesterol levels if they are indeed too high. I've got 8 different ways that you can utilize right now to help lower your cholesterol levels. So let's jump right into it and see what we got. Number 1, and I put this number 1 for a reason because I do think this is likely the best thing you can do if you need to do it, and that's lose weight. If you need to lose weight, then this can help a lot. Even a little bit of weight loss can make big strides on lowering cholesterol levels. This is an effect that has been observed for over 30 years, since the 1980s. In one review, for instance, that I looked at as I prepared for this episode, researchers noted that every 20 pounds of weight loss was associated with a drop of about 9 points in cholesterol levels. That's actually pretty darn good. For some people, that could put them out from being high to in the normal range. And in addition to that, weight loss can also lower your bad cholesterol levels, your LDL, and it can also be a very good booster of HDL, good cholesterol levels. So weight loss can do a lot of good in terms of dropping your cholesterol levels. Now, I also realize that for some people, they may be thinking about the size of bad cholesterol, because heart disease is not really just about HDL and LDL and triglycerides and stuff like that, but the size of these particles appears to also play a role in heart disease progression. And that's really the reason why we're talking about all this today, is because, again, higher cholesterol, higher LDL, higher triglycerides, these can be associated with greater risk of heart disease. When it comes to bad cholesterol, LDL, particle size seems to play a role in the development of heart disease. Generally, smaller LDL particles are bad, and bigger LDL particles are generally thought of as being heart disease protective against heart disease, for instance. This is not something that a doctor is probably going to be testing for. These are advanced tests that, I don't even know if they'd be covered by insurance, but again, it's something you can talk to your doctor about if you want to know your HDL and LDL particle size. But I bring this up for a reason. Some research has shown that weight loss can increase the size of bad cholesterol, make those LDL particles bigger. And so remember, the bigger the LDL, the less likely they appear to play a role in the development of heart disease. So again, something that might want to be on your radar. Since we're finishing up Christmas and the holiday season, I know we're about to be bombarded with lots and lots of diet ads on TV and the internet, etc. I want you to realize that when it comes to weight loss, you do not need to be doing extreme diets or cutting out this or cutting out that from what you're eating. It's just not necessary. At the end of the day, all diets work the same darn way. They somehow get us to cut back on the amount of calories we're eating. They either do that by getting you to omit certain foods or by portion control. You only eat what, for instance, they give you every month. And that's how a lot of these popular packaged foods that you see advertised on TV work. Really, it's through portion control, which at the end of the day is all about calorie control. If you just wanted to cut back on calories yourself, you could get the same effect as some of these diets and eating programs that you're likely to hear about. And when I say cutting out calories, I don't mean a lot either. You don't need to cut out 2,000 calories a day. Generally, anywhere from about 250 to about 500 calories per day, less than normal, is enough for weight loss for the vast majority of people hearing me right now. And that's not a lot. 250 calories a day is not a lot. That's going to lead to about a half a pound of weight loss per week. And that's perfectly fine. You don't need very quick drops in weight. Slow and steady is the name of the game when it comes to this. Now, you could make an argument for eating, say, a more plant-based diet, and that's not because of maybe the nutrients in the plants per se, but because the plant-based diets tend to be higher in fiber. Fiber doesn't have any calories. Fiber tends to fill us up, and in theory, this means we might tend to eat less. So again, that may be an advantage of eating a higher fiber diet. It may help lead to more weight loss, which in turn can help lower levels of cholesterol. And as a side note, the fiber in those foods may also help alter our microbiome. This microbiome may play a role in, say, weight loss as well. There's a lot of research on the microbiome and weight loss ongoing. It's still the wild, wild west as far as I'm concerned. And I'll most likely do episodes on the microbiome and weight loss and other aspects in the future. But just realize that fiber has no calories. Fiber helps fill us up. And that's the most common way that higher fiber diets tend to lead to weight loss. But there may be other mechanisms in play as well. Now, if weight loss would be number one on the list, number two, I would have to put as exercise. As a rule, gang, when it comes to health problems, being more physically active tends to improve it. I really can't think of a lot of downsides to moving more. And the same is true for cholesterol levels as well. So if you're thinking about starting an exercise program to help modulate your cholesterol levels, how much do you need to do? Turns out not a lot. If we're talking just for regular adults, who I think is probably most of the people who are listening to me right now, we're talking basically between 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate intensity exercise. 150 to 300 minutes a week. Oh, and by the way, I don't think anybody needs to be starting at 300 minutes a week. I don't think people need to be starting per se at 150 minutes of exercise per week. You start where you are with what you can do. If all you can do is 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes. That's fine. Now, I mentioned a second ago, moderate intensity exercise. You hear this on the news a lot on TV when they say, well, people should get between, a minimum of 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week. Problem is they never tell you what moderate exercise means. Moderate exercise is defined this way. It's an intensity where you can hear yourself breathing, but yet you can still carry on a conversation. Essentially, you take a couple sentences, you say a couple sentences, you take a breath. Say a couple sentences, take a breath. That is moderate intensity exercise. You can talk while you're exercising, but you can't sing while you're exercising. So that's one way you can classify moderate intensity exercise. If you can carry on a conversation, that's moderate, and that's what you want to aim for. If you're more advanced, sure, you can do vigorous or strenuous intense exercise if you want to. That's perfectly fine. And the guideline for intense exercise is less, actually, you might expect. It's anywhere from 75 to 150 minutes per week. Again, it's less because you're doing a more intense amount of exercise. The more intense you're doing, in theory, the less likely you may need to do it. That said, I don't think most people need to be go out and running marathons to achieve beneficial effects on cholesterol levels. I think for the vast majority of people listening to me right now, anywhere from 150 to 300 minutes per week will be fantastic for helping lower cholesterol levels, as well as doing a whole lot of other things. I mean, we could spend multiple episodes on the benefits of exercise. I think it's episode number 3 where I gave you several little-known benefits of exercise. You might want to check back there for more. But again, for most people, 150 to 300 minutes will be just fine. And why am I harping on just doing a little bit? Because you get a lot of benefit from doing a little bit. One investigation noted that if you could do 150 minutes of physical activity per week, that appeared to be associated with a reduced risk of dying from everything by as much as 33%. Think about that. Exercising, moving. I'm not even talking about going to the gym, by the way. I'm saying moving, taking a walk around the block, doing yard work, etc. Moving for about 150 minutes a week seems to reduce the risk of dying by as much as 33%. That's huge. Again, we're only talking essentially 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Think about it. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, there's your 150. And as an added bonus, you don't have to do it all at the same time either. So a lot of people are under the impression that you've got to exercise at the same time and you can't stop. That's not true. For instance, you could do a 10-minute walk in the morning, a 10-minute walk in the afternoon, a 10-minute walk in the evening. You just accumulate your 30 minutes. That's the beauty of physical activity. It has an accumulating effect. You don't have to do it at the same time. Now, as for cholesterol levels, multiple studies have shown regular exercise can lower LDL levels, the bad cholesterol, boost HDL levels, that's the good cholesterol, and even lower triglyceride levels. So exercise and weight loss, they do tend to go hand in hand. They seem to have complementary effects in the body, and that's why I think doing them both at the same time is better than either one. But if you can't, then just start sticking with one is better than not doing either. One little known aspect of exercise that I wanted to throw out to you because you may have seen something about this mentioned on television. Exercise, physical activity, I should say that because I'm not just talking gym stuff, but exercise or physical activity in general seems to lower an enzyme in the body called PCSK9. PCSK9 is an enzyme that's involved in cholesterol metabolism, cholesterol and LDL, bad cholesterol. And if you can lower PCSK9 levels, well, this can in turn help lower cholesterol and LDL levels too. I bring this up because there's a drug advertised on TV in America called Repatha, and it's an injectable cholesterol-lowering drug, and it's very effective at lowering PCSK9 levels very well. Downside of, again, any kind of drug, especially something you inject in your body, is there may be some negative side effects. And just as a sidebar, I know somebody who has taken that Repatha drug, really, really horrific muscle pain that lasted for months after he stopped taking Repatha. I have since run into other people who have taken this particular medication. I've also run into that negative side effect of bad muscle pain. Again, aside from regular muscle soreness that goes away in a couple days, nothing like those kind of muscle pains would occur with physical activity. So again, exercise lowers LDL, boosts HDL, lowers triglyceride levels. And again, one mechanism by way it may do this is by improving or lowering those PCSK9 enzyme levels in the body. So again, pretty interesting stuff, and not a lot of side effects to exercise that are bad as far as I'm concerned. Now, weight loss is number one and exercise is number two. Number three should come as no surprise to anybody, and that is don't smoke. Or stop smoking if you are. Smoking has been on the decline in America for a while, but just in case nobody's got the memo yet, it goes without saying, I'm going to say it anyway. Smoking is bad for you. I knew you knew this. Smoking-related cancers, again, not a good thing. If you've ever seen anyone with cancer from smoking, it is not pretty. I'll be up front and I'll just say it. I am not unbiased when it comes to this. Smoking has irreparably changed the course of my life. I lost both of my parents to smoking-related cancers, and I lost them less than 3 months from each other. So I have seen up close and personal what smoking does to somebody. So I'll just say it's not good, and I don't wish that on anybody. But again, if we leave out the cancer aspect and the heart disease aspects of smoking, again, not a lot coming from this. But one thing that mostly doesn't get a lot of attention is that smoking significantly lowers HDL levels, HDL being the good cholesterol. And if you lower these HDL levels, this in turn will increase the risk of a heart attack. So again, this is one mechanism by which cigarette smoking, tobacco smoking will increase the risk of heart disease. It lowers HDL, and unfortunately, it also raises triglyceride levels and LDL levels. So smoking raises the bad stuff, and it lowers the good stuff. It raises bad cholesterol levels, it raises triglyceride levels, and it also lowers good cholesterol, HDL, as well. The good news is, if I have just prompted you to quit smoking, congratulations. The good news also is that once we stop, we tend to rebound fairly quickly in a number of different ways after stopping smoking. For instance, I mentioned that smoking lowers HDL levels. Well, those HDL, those good cholesterol levels, tend to bounce back in less than a month after you stop smoking. So we tend to bounce back fairly quickly after we stop doing this stuff. Oh, and another sidebar, chewing tobacco, yeah, that's not any safer than smoking. Chewing tobacco also raises cholesterol levels, also raises bad cholesterol levels, and cancers, they go up too with chewing tobacco. So yeah, not a good idea to be doing that as an alternative. So I basically just gave you 3 major lifestyle things that you could do to lower your cholesterol levels. I think those really should form the foundation. But what about supplements? Are there any dietary supplements that you could take that might help lower cholesterol levels? Turns out, yeah, there are. So I want to give you some supplements, some you may have heard of, some you may not have heard of, which research shows can help reduce cholesterol levels. Number one is something that a lot of people have probably heard of, and that's red yeast rice. Red yeast rice, this is popular in the world of cholesterol-lowering dietary supplements. In fact, I'll bet it's probably the first thing people turn to when they find their cholesterol levels too high, especially people who are very against taking statin medications. Statin medications are the cholesterol-lowering drugs you've most likely seen on television. And they very do effectively lower cholesterol levels. But a lot of people are against taking medications, so they hear that red yeast rice can help cholesterol levels. And so they say to their doctor, well, I'd rather take a more natural approach first. Let me try red yeast rice. So the last time I took a look at this, there was I'd say about a dozen or so clinical trials that have noted that red yeast rice dietary supplements can lower cholesterol levels. Generally, they lower cholesterol levels by around 20 or so percent. That's significant. They also had an added benefit in that they can lower bad cholesterol, LDL, by as much as 30%. And some of the studies actually show they can lower triglyceride levels, and they may even boost HDL levels too. Again, that's another reason why a lot of people have heard about red yeast rice. It's been around for many, many years, and it is probably the supplement people turn to or think of most when their cholesterol levels are a little too high, and especially those people who are adverse to taking a statin medication. How does red yeast rice work? How does red yeast rice lower cholesterol levels? Well, it turns out it does work, and there's a pretty interesting way. Turns out red yeast rice contains a statin drug. I'm not kidding. Red yeast rice works because it contains a naturally occurring statin compound that looks very similar to the drug lovastatin, a prescription medication, and that's why it works. So I bring that up because I find it very interesting that when people say, I don't want to take a statin drug, I want to take red yeast rice. Well, red yeast rice, it works because it is basically a statin medication. It's found naturally in this fermented rice product, and that's why it can be sold as a dietary supplement. It works the same darn way as a drug. It basically blocks an enzyme called HMG co-reductase, which can make cholesterol levels. So it works very similar as a statin medication. So you block that enzyme and cholesterol levels go down. I wanted to bring that up to people because red yeast rice basically contains a naturally occurring statin compound, it may also have the same side effects as prescription statin medications. So again, it's always a good idea to be talking to your doctor about this before taking it. For instance, some people who take medications for cholesterol experience muscle pain. Sometimes it can be very debilitating. They have trouble walking, and those same muscle pains can also be associated with red yeast rice dietary supplements. For instance, when you watch those TV commercials for statin medications, they usually also very subtly talk about a rare but serious side effect that may be associated with these statin drugs as well. That rare but serious side effect is rhabdomyolysis, which if you know me, you know is the topic that I love to talk about more than anything else, other than probably dietary supplements. Well, again, rhabdomyolysis can be caused by statin medications, and there are some reports of rhabdomyolysis occurring from red yeast rice supplements as well. That's why, again, it is something that I think people should be talking to their doctor about before they're going to be taking this particular dietary supplement. Some companies, if you're going to look at this for yourself, note that some companies will combine red yeast rice with coenzyme Q10. That's another dietary supplement. The reason they do this is that the statin medications knock out our ability to make CoQ10, and that seems to be related to those muscle pains, muscle aches that people experience. So the dietary supplement companies sometimes will combine CoQ10 with the red yeast rice compound to mitigate or reduce the muscle aches and pains. Some people have told me this strategy works. Other people have told me not so much. So I think it's an individual thing, like anything. So, just be on the lookout. You may notice CoQ10 and red yeast rice kind of going hand in hand in a dietary supplement, and that's the reason why. But again, if you're considering red yeast rice, it's a good idea to talk to your doctor before taking that. It probably will work in many individuals, but again, it can have some side effects that I think is worth taking note of. While red yeast rice gets a lot of attention, the next supplement I want to talk to you about briefly here is one that I think most people have probably never heard of before. It's called citrus bergamot. Citrus bergamot. I sometimes call this a kinder, gentler version of red yeast rice. And as the name suggests, citrus, this is a compound that is isolated from the bergamot orange, a citrus fruit. So citrus bergamot is a dietary supplement. It contains ingredients which are isolated from the bergamot orange, and there are some very interesting research studies on this supplement as it pertains to lowering cholesterol levels. In the episode notes to this episode, I'm going to list my review of citrus bergamot, and I'll also list the YouTube video I did on the research as well, if you're looking into the research for yourself. But here's essentially a summary of citrus bergamot as it pertains to lowering of cholesterol levels. So one investigation noted that 1,000 milligrams of citrus bergamot could reduce total cholesterol levels, triglyceride levels, LDL, bad cholesterol levels, and also appeared to boost good cholesterol levels as well, more than a placebo did, by the way. They actually compared people, gave them bergamot, gave them a placebo, and noticed these beneficial effects. And what's more, it only took a month for these beneficial effects to kick in. Another investigation, again, this is not just one study on bergamot. There's at least 3 or 4 out there now that have shown the same effect. Another investigation, again, using 1,000 milligrams of citrus bergamot compared it to a placebo 1 month later. Total cholesterol drops from 278 down to 191. Bad cholesterol levels drop from 191 down to 113. That's huge. Triglyceride levels, they go from 238 all the way down to 165, and there was a modest bump in HDL levels. It increased from 38 to 45. So pretty interesting research on citrus bergamot. I do believe this is definitely worth something taking a look at if your cholesterol level's high. I would look at the bergamot before looking at red yeast rice, in my opinion. Now, if we leave bergamot alone, the next supplement to talk about is one that people have probably heard of. I'm sure they have, and some of you probably are even taking it. It's one of the most popular dietary supplements for overall health that's out there, and it's fish oil. If we're talking about fish oil, or you see papers written on this or websites, I want you to realize that they're probably talking about omega-3 fatty acids called EPA and DHA. EPA and DHA. And those are acronyms that stand for very big words. EPA stands for eicosapentaenoic acid. DHA is dihexaenoic acid. Nobody calls them that. They call them EPA and DHA. There have been multiple studies over the years that noting that fish oil supplements can reduce cholesterol levels. The most consistent finding I have seen in the research is how fish oil seems to lower triglyceride levels. So if you have elevated levels of triglycerides, fish oil is maybe something to take a look at. The issue with fish oil, however, is that you normally have to take a lot of it to get these beneficial effects. The studies that I have seen have used between 3 and 4 grams of fish oils a day. Again, that's 3,000 milligrams or 4,000 milligrams a day. And that's a lot. Most people are probably going to be getting about 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day if they're eating a normal diet or eating fish or even taking fish oil supplements. So again, you have to take a lot of fish oil to get these beneficial effects. And then the other thing to consider is that fish oil supplements, most of them that I have seen, are a combination of EPA and DHA. I don't normally see supplements that are only EPA or only DHA. And I think that's something to consider because there is some evidence that EPA itself may be more powerful at, say, reducing the risk of heart disease than DHA. And I say that because there is a prescription drug on the market called Vascepa. And Vascepa came out, I guess, around 2018 or so. This is a fish oil supplement that only contains EPA. Essentially, it's giving people 4 grams of EPA. And the company that makes this prescription medication has done some research that it might reduce the risk of strokes and heart attacks by as much as 25%. I bring that up because, again, I want you to realize that maybe, according to this research that this drug company has done, maybe EPA may be more powerful than DHA in terms of reducing the risk of heart disease. That doesn't mean the DHA is useless. It's not. You need DHA for other things. As the way I usually look at it and think of it in my mind is I think EPA for blood and heart health. I think DHA for brain health. That's how I tend to compartmentalize these two, but realize that they both have wide-ranging effects in the body, and it really shouldn't be boiled down to just EPA for heart and DHA for brain. But that's how I tend to think of it, just to compartmentalize things. Also, I want you to realize that just because this drug may reduce heart disease and heart attacks by 25%, that doesn't necessarily mean a dietary supplement would do the same thing. But again, it's going to take more research to know. I'm sure that supplement companies are probably racing to do research on EPA-only dietary supplements. We'll have to see what the future holds on this topic. But again, fish oil, pretty popular when it comes to heart health. Now, if you're eating fish and you're like, well, I don't want to take a fish oil supplement, I just want to eat fish. Well, just realize that if you're eating a piece of fish and it's about the size of the palm of your hand, you're getting about 1,000 or so milligrams of a combination of EPA and DHA. That's a good way of looking at it. About 1,000 milligrams if the piece of fish is about the palm of your hand. If you are, sidebar again, if you are taking fish oil supplements, one of the things that I do is I keep it in the refrigerator, and that's because I want to prevent it from spoiling. Remember, fish oil is a fat. It's not something that I would want to be leaving on the kitchen counter where light can hit it and it gets hot. I always want to keep this stuff in the refrigerator. And by the way, if you are burping up fishy smells after you take your fish oil supplement, that's probably a sign the fish oil has gone bad. That's another reason why I like keeping this stuff in the refrigerator so I can keep it around longer. Now, the next supplement that I want to talk about is something that I used to be popular, probably in the 80s. It seems to have lost its popularity, but one worth taking a look at again, and that's basically garlic. Garlic, the food. You can put garlic on, your spaghetti sauce, or I even put it in chili. Garlic has numerous health benefits, and there's lots of studies showing that garlic supplements, as well as garlic, the food, can lower cholesterol levels. Actually, one study that I looked at a while ago noted that garlic was even more effective than fish oil. So take that for what it is. Garlic also appears to lower both total cholesterol and bad cholesterol levels, and garlic also seems to raise HDL levels, good cholesterol levels as well. And in addition to that, the effects of garlic on helping blood pressure are also widely known. So again, something else, if your blood pressure is a little on the high side, garlic can help modulate that as well. Similar to this, again, another sidebar. Got a lot of sidebars in this episode. I'm personally impressed with another dietary supplement. It's actually called aged garlic extract. As the name suggests, this supplement contains an extract of garlic. There has been various studies on this compound noting that it seems to have a whole bunch of effects in the body, but it seems to also reduce total cholesterol levels, LDL levels, maybe triglyceride levels as well. So an aged garlic extract, not expensive. This is actually something that I take myself, and I don't even have cholesterol levels at all. My cholesterol is usually pretty darn good. I'm impressed with the research on this particular dietary supplement. It's made by a company called Kyolic. Not expensive. You can find it at any health food store, Amazon, eBay, etc. So been around for a long time. Again, it usually flies below the radar. Probably something I think more people should be taking a look at. Again, it's just something I've been taking myself for several years. So that is garlic. That's the sixth thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of lowering cholesterol levels. The next thing is one that I think maybe you've heard of before, maybe not. It's called niacin. Niacin is a vitamin. It also goes by the name vitamin B3, and it has been used since at least the 1950s for helping cholesterol levels. Specifically, studies have noted that niacin can lower bad cholesterol levels, triglyceride levels, and again, it also has the added bonus in that it seems to also boost HDL levels as well. Niacin has become so popular that it is also a prescription drug. There's a prescription drug that is basically a weapons-grade high-dose niacin supplement. So again, that's a testament to the fact that niacin can help modulate cholesterol levels. The problem, again, with niacin, as far as I'm concerned, is that it generally takes a lot of niacin to see beneficial effects on cholesterol and LDL and HDL levels. Again, that can be an issue. Several studies appear to show benefits at over 1,000 milligrams a day. And again, that's a lot more than the RDA for niacin. The issue with niacin is that, again, in very high doses, it can raise your liver enzymes. It may raise your blood sugar levels. So again, niacin itself is not something I think I would self-medicate with, at least not without getting regular checkups by your doctor for getting different blood tests and making sure everything is good. But niacin, you can't talk about cholesterol without talking about niacin, because the research really is out there and it does appear to show it does work. It just may not be the product of choice these days because there's other options out there, but the research does show it may help many individuals. Also, as a sidebar, niacin itself, the vitamin, has been undergoing getting a lot of publicity, I should say. Niacin used to not be talked about at all until about 2-3 years ago. Niacin started getting a lot of attention because it is a well-known booster of NAD. NAD is an energy molecule. NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And this is just one of the energy molecules that helps us form ATP. ATP is our ultimate energy molecule. It helps us do everything. Generally, as we get older, we tend to make less NAD. And so the idea is if you could boost your NAD levels, then maybe this might help give you more energy and maybe slow down the aging process. Yes, niacin is highly touted in some circles as an anti-aging nutrient. Not niacin per se, however. There is another form of niacin that is being touted in dietary supplements called nicotinamide riboside. Nicotinamide riboside. You may have seen commercials for dietary supplements that contain this form of niacin. And again, the idea is nicotinamide riboside boosts NAD levels, and in doing so may help promote better health and slow aging and stuff like that. What I would say is I have looked at the research on nicotinamide riboside. So if you're very interested in raising your NAD levels yourself, skip back to episode number 8. That's where I talked more about the anti-aging effects of niacin, nicotinamide riboside, and my questions about it as well. So I will link in the description to a YouTube video that I did on how to naturally raise your NAD levels if you want to try to do this for yourself, just as another sidebar. Yet another sidebar. So again, there you have it. I gave you 7 different ways. Did I say 8? I meant 7. I gave you 7 different ways to help lower your cholesterol levels naturally. As always, I'm going to put links to the citations I used in this episode in the episode notes that I post at my website, joe-cannon.com, joe-cannon.com. You can reach me there. And you can also reach me at my other website, supplementclarity.com. So with that, that's going to bring this episode number 24 to a close, except for one last piece of business, and that is the quote of the week. And it comes to us actually from Anonymous. We don't know who actually said this, but it goes like this. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. I like that. Until next week, gang. Actually, until next year, I should say. Go out, be safe, and where you can, try to make a difference.